What does it mean when the Jews use the word goy or goyim? With recent chatter from the continuing Israeli war with Gaza and other social uproar, this has become a huge topic. Most famously today, figures such as Candace Owens tells us that the word means cattle. Owens also asserts that they, and whoever that is, are trying to bury history. But is this true? In the Bible, the word goy is translated nation or people every single time. It is not a slur, or it is not even a derogatory term necessarily. The word is even used for Israel, seen in the book of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 6a, which says, quote, "But you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation." End quote. Exodus chapter 19:6 sees Israel with the mission to serve and bless the world, again through Israel. Trying to translate goy as cattle here makes literally no linguistic sense at all. God has a holy cow? There's no way that this can be a even reasonable way to see this passage. So this is obviously the incorrect way to read the word goy in the Bible. So the Bible does not use this word as a slur. As we can see, it is used of Israel as a nation or a people, but it can also be used of other nations and other people groups. However, others have argued that it did mean nation originally, but it was changed to mean cattle at some time in the distant past. However, this is wrong too. Yet, there was a linguistic shift during the Hellenistic and Roman periods, which the term was used to designate an ethnic outgroup, specifically non-Jews. In the New Testament, this is seen as Gentiles. The word, again, in the New Testament is not a slur either. It is similar to how Americans refer to illegal immigrants, for example. We Americans all can call these kinds of people, immigrants, words like alien or foreigner. You can see both of these terms being used against people who are non-American. Again, not as a slur, but as a way to say anyone who is not American is a foreigner or an alien, as in not from here. They're not from America. Scholars and linguists universally reject Candace Owens' view on this word, which is an important point. Candace Owens and others that teach similar to her are trying to tell you that they know more than all of these people. They know better and more than these particular experts, which is outright insane. Now, the whole reason from ancient Jewish theology of the separation of nations goes back to the story of Genesis chapter 11. To here, I do have another video explaining Genesis chapter 11 that I will link in the first comment below. However, I can give a just very brief understanding of Genesis chapter 11. Genesis 11 is the story in the Old Testament that we get about God separating himself from the rebellious nations who went to worship the rebellious sons of God. From this event, this is how the Old Testament sets itself up as God against the nations. The God of Israel against the gods of Egypt, the gods of Babylonian, the gods of the Babylonian empires, and the gods of the Assyrian Empire, and so on and so forth. The whole point of the entire Jewish Bible is to bring all of the lost nations back home, bring them back to the one true God. And this is the fulfillment of this in the New Testament of the Pentecost story of Genesis chapter 11. That's the briefest explanation that I can give of it, but for more, I certainly recommend my video that I'll link below, or you can check out scholars such as Michael Heiser on this topic. Continuing though, the lie that Jews think that they are better than the whole world, and think of us Americans and other non-Jewish people as cattle, is a conspiracy theory that needs to go away. It has caused so much harm and persecution against the Jewish people that it is deeply saddening. Going even further, Jesus, for example, got his major moral teachings not from other groups, but from the Jews, and specifically the Old Testament. Jesus is using the minor prophets and the Mosaic law when he says to love your neighbor and treat the foreigner the same way that you treat an Israelite. Jesus got his very view of exploiting the poor and then actually giving to the poor from the Old Testament. Jesus, who under Orthodox Christianity is the Jewish God incarnate, changed the moral conscience of the Western world. To end, well, I can put it this way. Jews do not hate you. They do not hate non-Jewish people. And because of this, we must stand against these kinds of conspiracy theories because they can ultimately, we can see what they have caused to the Jews and what we just saw happen to the Jews just less than 100 years ago. And with that, I can put one more distinction on this as well. When you think of major groups that have happened politically since the Holocaust, which is what I'm referring to, the big event that happened less than 100 years ago, you can think of examples like Zionism, which so many people are against, but so many people don't recognize that Zionism was created as a way, a secular, non-religious way, to help the persecution of the Jewish people. The whole reason that Zionism exists in the way that it does is to help the Jewish people, to give them the right of a sovereign state. And this is why this is such a big issue, because it became this was such a large ordeal that it made it to where we had to help the Jews build a secular version of how to protect themselves. And this couldn't be more important today. We have to learn this history of all of these things so that we do not make the same mistakes of people in the past. With that, thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe for more content like this.